and welcome to Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I'm Eric Landrum, along with Garth Neufeld, your podcast hosts. As the name implies, we center on conversations about teaching, but we often veer into other interesting topics, which is the end stuff. This is episode number 140, where Garth had the opportunity to interview Jenel Cavazos from the University of Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma. Before you hear the interview, please allow me to share some listening tips and some of my favorite moments. Now, this was a lovely interview for me to listen to, and I think you're going to enjoy it just as much. Jenel has been at the University of Oklahoma as a faculty member for 7 years. She is a tenured associate professor, and she is the Introductory Psychology Coordinator. So it was interesting to hear about these details because Jenel is at an R1 school, and different R1 schools handle introductory psychology in different ways. In fact, it was actually fascinating to get the inside scoop about this course because every semester she is teaching 2 sections of 500 students. So that's 1,000 students per semester, and she has a cadre, a system, a hierarchy of teaching assistants. She typically has 6 graduate students and 20 undergraduate teaching assistants as that 1 lead TA. And then she talked about using GroupMe, which is a software system. And her research, her SOTL research, is about what makes a good TA. And so it was really great to hear about that. She also gives her TAs specialty tasks to perform in the classroom. So I'm going to give you a spoiler alert in that I'm not going to spoil it. I want you to listen for those. I don't know if either Garth or Jenel picked up on this. It was kind of like they almost finished each other's sentences in a little way. They were talking about class size, and obviously that impacts the type of assignments you can do, but also the type of assessments and course design. Garth mentioned 500-person sections and labeled it insane. And when Garth mentioned his 33-person sections, Jenel mentioned cute. And so and then they kind of zipped right past that, and I thought that was really interesting. What I really appreciated from Jenel is that you can hear the passion in her voice when she's talking about this course that she has devoted a great deal of her professional life to. And I'm not going to get this exactly right, but this is a pretty decent approximation. What else is more important than how we treat other people? And she sees her role as just planting seeds for her students. I do appreciate that she talked about some of her pedagogical decisions because I think folks like me and others who are thinking about an intro psych course can really appreciate kind of the behind the sneak peek picture of how a complicated course like this is designed. And so she talked about one publisher and piece of software that she formerly used, and now she's using a different approach, and how content delivery and testing software has changed for her, and how she's adopted an open book, open note, timed 48-hour window for testing. And she gave the rationale for that and how it's linked to watching the experiences of her own daughter in college and her daughter's friends. And I really appreciated that. This conversation ended on some kind of some personal insights, which I always appreciate hearing with our guests when they're comfortable sharing those. And Jenel grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada, and she shared some of her memories because her mom and dad worked in a casino, and so she grew up in a casino. And then it was really fascinating to hear her talk about when she moved out of Las Vegas, how the absence of sound was odd for her, whereas for most of us, the constant sound when we visit Las Vegas or Reno would be the thing to have to acclimate to. Anyway, you're going to really enjoy this conversation with a dyed-in-the-wool, passionate instructor of introductory psychology. Enjoy.
Listeners, we want to invite you to be among the first to know who and what's coming up on the Psych Sessions podcast. Join our opt-in email list, just like hundreds of psychology instructors have already done. We promise not to fill your inboxes. When we email you bi-weekly or monthly, it will be something that means something. From new series announcements to new opportunities, we invite you to join the mission to get free, high-quality professional development to all teachers of psychology. So sign up for our opt-in email list. Just go to bit.ly/psych sessions-email. That's all lowercase bit.ly/psych sessions-email. It's my great pleasure to be here today with Dr. Jenel Cavazos from the University of Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma. Welcome to Psych Sessions.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Right on. A lot of user errors happening right now. Jenel, we've had this pandemic, as you know, you've heard of it, right?
I've been there. Yeah,
okay.
seen that article a couple times.
And so Eric and I, we went to Zoom, which we never really wanted to do. We always wanted this to be a face-to-face kind of experience to interview folks. Mm-hmm. And then the pandemic hit, and so like you adapt, and then see this is a Zoom H6 in front of me. It's like our mics are plugged into it and stuff. It's kind of fancy. And when I came to NITOP to start interviewing people in person, I like forgot how to use it. So
yeah. Oh, absolutely, because it's been years at this point. Right.
It's years.
Right.
Well, and so I'm going into the classroom on Monday for the first time in years.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm wondering, like, what else am I going to forget? You know?
I felt that way in the fall coming in. It was the first time in a year that I taught in person, and it felt like I'd never left. Like it's just
really, it's
just rote, having done it for years. You know, this is probably, it's something you've done for a while, but probably not as consistently as you've taught classes. So I think it definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, I figured it out fairly quickly. Although, like, this thing is blinking at me. I'm not sure why. But it's recording, so we're good. Okay.
I mean, that's the important part.
Right. There have been 2 occasions in Psych Sessions history where it didn't record. Sorry to Molly Metz and Elizabeth Hammer.
Oh.
Yeah. But we got them both anyway. So, hey, do you ever have these conference moments where you like see someone and you're like, I know you, but social media kind of messes us up.
All the time.
Right. Like, do we have a relationship? I can't remember or whatever. And that was... Oh, anyway, I should start with this. All my feelings towards you are very positive. I just don't...
Oh, good.
I just have no idea where they came from.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. So we talked about this briefly, but what are our interactions? Have they been on social media to your memory?
Mostly. I mean, I remember seeing you at a couple of conferences, obviously here and then at STP.
Yep.
And just knowing your name, I think also from social media and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your social media of choice? Because I still can't place it.
I think I spend probably most time on Facebook. Personally, but then I'm on Twitter a fair amount.
Okay.
More academic Twitter, more psych people on Twitter, I think.
So you use those differently personally, professionally?
Yes.
You draw that line.
It's a loose line. It's a very loose line because I'm friends on Facebook with lots of psych people, but they're generally people that I have interacted with in person somehow.
Right. Well, and now there's those programs that are out there where you can, I haven't signed up. I don't post much, but I like you can post one time and it blasts to multiple.
Yes. I do that with Facebook and Instagram.
Oh, what program do you use for that?
It works within the app itself.
Oh.
So Facebook and Instagram now, I mean, they communicate with each other. So you can set it so that everything you post on Facebook automatically posts to Instagram as well. Including like your stories and things like that, and vice versa. If you want to go from Instagram to Facebook.
Huh. What's your relationship with students in Facebook?
I want to know them relatively well before I would do something like that. I used to maintain a Psych with Dr. C Facebook and Twitter account, and it wasn't getting used. Students aren't on Facebook, really, first
Right.
of all.
Yeah.
And the students want to maintain some distance between their social media and their professors, I found. And so generally speaking, I haven't posted on it in a while. I've kind of let it die. And so mostly if a student seeks me out and I know them really well, I've worked with them in research, they've been TAs for me, things like that, then I will allow that, because I don't really post anything anyway that I wouldn't feel comfortable sharing with basically the whole world, because that's just good.
I think
social
so, too.
media
Yeah.
use, so
I just
so
assume
I'm
everybody's
generally
got
okay
all
with
my
it.
information. and-
Right, exactly. I'm generally okay with it. Like if I would talk to them about my family and my pets, then I'm okay with being friends with them on Facebook.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly right. Okay, well, we figured that out. And so, yes, we have crossed paths for
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
And then you're an STP, or you go to ACT sometimes? Okay, how long have you been part of that group for?
I've been part of the group for a couple of years, but the last ACT was the first one I had gone to, because typically this eats my budget, my travel budget.
Totally.
Night job is expensive.
Yeah.
But so I've started going to that as well, and I had planned on going this year too. Of course, I got moved online,
Yeah.
but
So
yeah.
Denver was last, right?
Denver. Was that it? Yeah,
Yeah, and then Louisville got canceled.
correct.
And then Pittsburgh got
And then we'll see.
canceled, I think. Twice, right? Yeah, we canceled two, I think. 2021, 2020.
Yes.
Yep. So, and I can't remember where the next one is. So, but
don't know.
hopefully it takes place.
Right.
Will you have travel funds for? Will you make it work?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't know.
we will.
Like I had help with NITOP this year from like a sponsor, but I don't know on a regular year how I get out here, because it's such a great conference.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and we get a pretty decent budget, and as long as I don't do anything else, I can travel to the 2 conferences.
Oh, that's awesome.
Every year. Yeah.
Who negotiated that?
I have no idea.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's per faculty. We just take the big pool and divide it as enrichment funds. You can use it however you want. I choose to use basically the whole thing to go to conferences because, other people use it for specialized equipment or books or anything else. So it's sort of like you get this pool. You have to use it for something that the department approves of course. But what you choose to use that for is up to you.
How do you? So I'm guessing that's full-time faculty, right? How do adjuncts go to conferences and stuff?
I have no idea. I've never been one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
I guess either out of pocket or
like I wonder if there's money
you
from.
could apply for grant. I mean, I would imagine most universities and most organizations. I know NITOP has, you can apply for awards and travel grants and things like that.
Interesting. I had no idea about that. That's interesting. Okay, so can you tell us what you do there at the University of Oklahoma?
I can.
Yeah.
So I am I'm an associate professor, so I have tenure there. Yay. And I am the introductory psychology coordinator. So my position is really unique in the world of big R1 universities. Before me, there were a couple of people who were hired to do the same job, but as just regular general, research faculty. And they didn't last very long. They promptly quit because it's just impossible to run courses like this of this kind of magnitude and also make any progress towards tenure or keep up a research, like especially at an R1. It just was impossible. And so people kept kind of vacating the position. Well, my major professor in graduate school was Dr. Nicole Campbell, and she was also the intro psych coordinator, and she left the position to become a dean. And what's fortunate about that is that when sort of the position kept getting vacated and it was sort of like, well, maybe we need to just have grad students teach us. Like, what do we do? She kind of swooped in and said, no, this is my baby. Like, I worked so hard on this class for decades. It can't end this way.
Right.
And so with, I think, some of her influence, they rewrote the position to be a master teaching position. It is still fully tenured. We don't have a teaching faculty stream and a regular faculty stream.
Yeah.
We are just faculty. But it is a master teaching position. I have a decent service requirement, but very little research requirement. In fact, I believe I can take it down to 0 if I want to. I choose 10%, but that's my choice. And mostly what I do is teach. And the model worked extraordinarily well. I've obviously been there for 7 years.
Yeah.
And the year after me, we hired another person in the same role to do our introductory statistics. And that's Aaron Freeman, who has been pretty active in both STP and now NITOP. And so between the two of us, it's anecdotal evidence. I don't have, the real causal evidence. However, from 2015, which is when I came in until last year, our majors went from 600 to over 1,200. We've doubled in our undergrad majors. And I think that a fair amount of it is because my classes where you pull in the majors, where you get them interested and make them, because, freshman, gen psych, you pull in the majors, and Aaron's class is what intimidates most people out of being majors. Mm-hmm. And so you put really good teachers in intro psych and stats, and the world opens up. So, we've been able to hire open lines. We've been able to expand the department in a time when a lot of people have lost a lot. So we're very lucky and very fortunate for that.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate to be part of a department that values teaching. I have full voting, we're just regular faculty, and I really appreciate that.
Now, I'm coming out of the community college world, so this is all extremely foreign to me.
Okay.
And so, but it seems to me like there are people who have that teaching designation rather than full tenure track.
Yes.
Like that, because there are other people that we know that are at NITOP who are in a position kind of similar to yours, but don't have the standing you have, right?
Exactly. That is very, very, very common. So at most major universities, you are a professor or you are a teaching professor. Uh-huh. And the teaching professors are really seen as less than. And it's ridiculous and it's awful. It should not be that way. But the institution is kind of set up that way. And so that's one of the things that makes our position so unique, is that we don't have a designation as teaching versus not. We're just faculty, and the University of Oklahoma as a whole, we don't have those lines that are teaching faculty versus regular faculty. That's a rare situation.
Do you think, you may not know the answer to this question, do you think research suffers somehow because of that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I think it's the opposite, because what was happening beforehand is people would basically draw straws, like who gets the crap end of the deal, who has to teach the big intro sections. And like they really would, like, it took somebody away from what they wanted to be doing, whatever that was. But it wasn't their passion and it wasn't their area of expertise. So what these kinds of divisions allow us to do is it lets the people who really love to teach immerse themselves in teaching, and it lets the people who really love to research immerse themselves in research.
Right.
So I think it helps everyone's productivity to sort of delineate those roles. The trick is to do that without making them seem like one is more important than the other, which is what most universities do. Yeah.
Okay. So approximately how many people are in the department then?
25 maybe faculty.
And then how many of them are kind of researchers versus teachers?
We only have 2 teaching specialists.
Okay. Just the 2 of you.
Just the two of us that are full-time faculty. We have 1 lecturer position as well. And that is a rank renewable term position. So she teaches more than we do and does not have any research or service requirements, but also isn't tenure track.
Okay.
So we do have that position as well.
All right. Mm-hmm. So what is it like to be such a small part of like a larger department of researchers? I mean, I know it sounds like it's better at your institution than probably maybe some others.
Yes,
but
for sure.
So do you have what are your interactions like with your research colleagues and how, because I feel like no matter, even if the University of Oklahoma and the psychology department has set this up in such a way, mm-hmm. I think some of those things have to some of those like biases about teaching have to come in just with people, right? Or some of the...
Sure. I think so. And part of it, I think though, is that my specialty is intro. And so I'm not trying to be a research specialist, and I'm not trying to engage with them in the same level of expertise as they have, because that wouldn't serve me or my students.
Right.
I can't teach at that level of expertise. I teach intro. So I do a lot of, sometimes I'll go to faculty members and I'll say, hey, intro books, by the time things percolate down to us, sometimes they're old, sometimes they're outdated. What do you wish intro students knew when they got into your class?
Yeah.
And that helps me be able to sort of evaluate if I'm going to cut some material, if I'm going to keep, like, what would be a good thing to keep. And it helps them have a working relationship with me, because I'm where they're getting their eventual rock star students who are going to help in their labs and become their grad students.
The Psych Sessions podcast is brought to you by Macmillan Learning Psychology. Introducing Macmillan Learning's Achieve for Psychology, setting a whole new standard for integrating assessments, activities, and analytics into your teaching. One way Achieve does this is through new goal setting and reflection surveys. Pre-built and easy to assign, these surveys help students define and attain their own personal goals for the class, while giving instructors insights into each student's academic skills and emotional well-being. The goal setting and reflection surveys are just one tool in Achieve's suite of reports and insights, and one example of how Achieve goes well beyond just delivering first-rate class-to-class course materials. See a preview and get involved at macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions.
So we get along really well as a department. I'm, again, extraordinarily lucky that we actually like each other.
Yeah.
But we do get along very well. Even the big $1 million grant hard-hitting researchers, they appreciate that they, in many cases, don't want to do what I do at all.
Yeah.
Yes, and don't have to, but they're still getting the benefit of that later when those students get to them.
Oh, that's so great.
And it really, I can't see a better model for making everyone successful, including the researchers.
Including the students.
And the students, especially the students. But I mean, everybody gets to do what they're passionate about and not feel like they're, rolling their eyes and, I have to go and teach this class today, or I have to go and do this. The students can feel that. And they know whether you're passionate about your field and passionate about teaching them.
Do you, you talked about 10% research.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing in your classroom? And I'm guessing it's classroom. Do they, like, Soto's fine to do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
So what kind of questions do you ask?
So in the past, I kind of have two lines of research. One of them that I've been working on is Sotal research, primarily on teaching assistants is what I've been doing lately. And that's what I talked about at the STP the one time I did make it there. And so because I have such large classes, I have a lot of teaching assistants. And that has really become a unique specialized program where the teaching assistants each lead a team of students, and they're near peers. And so they're typically second semester freshmen or first semester sophomores. Like, they just took the class, and I pull them, from the classes that they're in. And, we work together really, really closely. And so, so in the fall semester, for example, I have 2 sections, each have 500 students. So I have 1,000 students myself. Then, I have 6 graduate assistants, and I have around 22 TAs. Usually I have 10 in each section, and then 1 lead TA who's been a TA before, come back to help the other, basically a TA to the TAs. And so each teaching assistant takes this group of students and is basically their go-to contact. They're, like I said, a freshman or a sophomore. I'm terrifying to them because, again, they walk in the room, they're 18. I'm up on a stage with a mic. I'm not a scary person. Anybody who's ever met me in person knows I'm not a scary person. But to the students, I'm wildly intimidating. And so are the grad students. So the undergrads come in and are able to perform these near peer functions and navigate them through the class, and they'll actually ask them questions and interact with them. And so they're mostly on GroupMe together. They will do everything.
Stop, GroupMe.
Uh-huh.
What is that?
So it's an app.
Okay.
It's a communication app. It's a lot like Slack.
Okay.
But they set up a GroupMe together where they have, they're able to message back and forth with not just their TA, but all the other people in their team. And so they can post something like, hey, where do we get the material for this assignment? And either their TA will respond or some other student will respond. They can say, hey, I'm studying over here. Anybody want to join me? And there's 60 other people on their team, those kinds of things. But sometimes they ask questions about like, what classes do you take after this? What's it like being a psych major? What's it like, living off campus? All sorts of things. So they communicate with their TA on that. And then the TAs communicate with me. So I kind of take those 1,000 down to a team of like 25 or 26 that actually have direct access to me at all times. So then the TAs are messaging me on GroupMe, and we're talking about what's it like to be a psych major later, what's grad school like, how do we do these things, and I kind of become mom a little bit to them, and we have this good relationship together. So I've been doing some research on what makes a good TA. What do they talk about in their GroupMes? Like how does communication go? Wow. Is there a benefit to like more humor versus, sticking on topic of class stuff? Like the people who post a lot of memes, are their students, are they performing better or worse? Those kinds of things. And then I also plan to look into what are the benefits for the teaching assistants themselves. I already know they're good students. They have to be TAs. They have to have gotten an A, and most are psych majors, but I kind of want to follow like what is happening to them that I can even qualitatively talk about, differences in leadership ability, differences in responsibility, having seen this other side of what it's like to be a college professor. Like, how does that then change them throughout the rest of their college career? So that's the next project that I want to start working on. So I've already done a paper on analyzing their GroupMe conversations. And so the next thing I want to look at is long-term sort of the effect on the TAs themselves.
Wow. Is there anything that you can share about the GroupMe conversations that was kind of interesting, or how did?
Yeah. So we basically took 2 snapshots a week. It was week 3 and week 13 of all of their GroupMe conversations, completely anonymous, that kind of thing. And then we analyzed them for first, is it class related or non-class related communication? And then from there, was it like a statement, or was it a question? Was it an opinion, an emotion? Like, just vague categories. Sure. Again, most of my research, I do research with undergrads, so it was vague categories.
Yeah.
And so we had tons of data, and we looked at all of that. And then correlated that with things like test scores, end of semester grades, but also a couple of affective, like how much did you like the class? How effective did you think your TAs were? And what surprised me a little bit was it was the middle of the road groups who performed best, who ended up with the best exam scores and the best end of semester grades. It was the groups who had the most like off class humor, the best connection. I kind of hypothesized that they would perform better. Yeah, they'd be more likely to come because all their friends are now there and they're goofing off, and they just have this good sense of cohesion. But it turns out too much of that, it tanks your grade a little bit. It wasn't, it's not going to make the difference between an A and an F, but they didn't perform as well. And then on the other hand, the groups who were really just, when's the test? Where's the information? How do I do this in Canvas? They didn't do very well either relative to the middle of the road that could both had some social and some, work stuff. So yeah. Middle of the road is best.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So you teach these 500-person sections,
yes.
which is insane.
I love it.
Yeah. I teach 33 at a time.
That's cute.
Yeah. I know. Thanks. But so you have to have this like pretty elaborate system set up for this to work, right? And did that system precede you, or did you get to develop it?
I developed it. We always had some undergrad TAs, and we always had the grad student support in place, but there were a lot of ideas thrown around at places like NITOP. I can't pinpoint the exact moment when I thought like it would be really cool to have these teams, but I know that I'm not the only person who uses the idea of like discussion sections, right? A lot of big intro classes have discussion sections, and we are not set up for that. We don't do that. It's just me. They just have the time in the classroom, but there's no reason you can't create smaller discussion-esque sessions within that big classroom by having them communicate, on an app like GroupMe. They sit together in the room, in teams and things like that. So you can foster a similar feel without having the scheduling requirements of discussion sections and all the work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of work. There's no doubt about it because I have to follow up with all those TAs. They're all, they get course credit. They get an upper division course credit for being a TA. So I have to grade them. I have to, make sure they are trained every semester, make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. They have a syllabus. They have their own Canvas class. And I don't get teaching credit for doing that. That is just something I do.
Yeah.
But it allows me to do things like have written assignments in a class of 500 students that there's no way I could do otherwise. Because I have so many people helping to grade and helping to manage. And all the TAs have their own jobs. So they do things like help with, compiling research credits because I have to participate in research. And they help with things like, just things like putting in extra credit, which is nothing if you have 30, but if you have 500, it's a lot. So grading surveys that I give out for extra credit and putting those in. I have a TA that handles the music in class that I play coming in. They do the music playlist every day, and one that sends out class-wide announcements every week. Or if I have something that I need to get out as an announcement, I message them and say, "Hey, can you post this to the class real quick?" And so they do, make sure every week, and then thereafter they are sending out something every class. So it sort of helps me compartmentalize what I need to do and get it off my plate, but gives them this really unique experience too.
Okay, so I understand that in large classrooms, a lot of times faculty in intro psych cannot assign written. Mm-hmm. They can't give written assessments. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the writing that you have your students do in intro psych with the system that you have?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. We do reviews before every exam. It's a unit review before every exam unit. And they have some short answer questions in those that are graded by the TAs. I usually just grade them like full credit, half credit, no credit.
Yep.
But there are more things that have to be written in a longer form, explained well. So for example, I think one of the ones we have in there is, explain how an SSRI works using the terms, synapse and action potential and serotonin and as a list of, and they have to write out what that means to them. Or things like, so-and-so found a correlation of 0.65 on this fake scenario. Tell me what that means in actual language and like what can they construe. Yeah. And so they're relatively straightforward. But then I have a grading system and they grade those. Then we have 3 application assignments throughout the semester that are more in depth on anything, on a couple of key areas. Like one of them came directly out of Doug Bernstein's, Bye Bye Intro that changed like my life. I mean, it really was one of those that
was so influential for me too.
Yes. It just made me think about everything we're doing that we could be doing differently. And after that, I put in a greatest myths, infographic assignment. So it's not a ton of writing, but they take a greatest myth, based on a list I give them. And I change that list every year so that we can't just be reusing the same infographics over and over again. And so they do an infographic debunking the myth using evidence. They have to go and find sources of evidence to show why that myth is false, as well as sources that show how it's continually perpetuated. And so they're getting some practice individually debunking myths, but in that they're also practicing things like understanding how to think critically about information that they're seeing around them and how to present information in a succinct way that isn't just a research paper, because we do communicate with others in lots of other ways. So I want them to do more than just write research papers. So they do that. They do another one that is analyzing commercials based on classical and operant conditioning principles, where they have to pick different commercials. And I always throw a theme at them. Like during the election, it had to be political ads. And then sometimes it's like it has to have an animal or it has to be food or drink or something like that.
Well, that's nice to keep them from recycling things,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well done.
And so then they take that ad and they, what's the neutral stimulus? What's the unconditioned stimulus? Why? How do you know this? How would you counter condition? There's those kinds of things that they have to do. And those are all graded by, both the graduate students and the undergrads. The last one that I just started, 2 years ago, mid-pandemic, is a social justice letter. And I put this in because of the events that just have been happening in our world, especially, that summer a couple of years ago that was just so hard and so bad. And so for that coming fall, I put in a new assignment, and I had the help of Leslie Bernstein on that. I messaged her and said, hey, she kept kind of putting out on Twitter, like, can I help anybody with anything? Like, I'm open. I'm here. I'm an expert in this stuff. If anybody has any ideas they want to bounce off me. And I was like, yes, please. That'd be me.
Yeah.
I would love to do this because I am in a very red state at a very conservative school. And I needed an assignment that I could give them that would be challenging, but not turn everybody off, and that's scalable and gradable for undergraduate students in that kind of scope. So we came up with the idea of writing a letter to someone in a position of power, loosely defined, to use persuasion techniques to convince them of why a social justice issue is important. They get to pick the issue and what could be done to solve that issue. And they have to use elements of psychology, persuasion techniques, and anything that they've learned in the class. And they list those, like what they included into the letter in order to convince this person in power that they should do something about this issue.
Do you give them a list?
Cool. I give them ideas. I give them ideas about a couple of things like there's something on the criminal justice system that's on the list. Again, when I started it, COVID was just sort of ramping up. And so there's something on the list about COVID disproportionately affecting African American communities. There's a couple of things like that. And I give them a couple of example articles, but then tell them you can pick your own topic. It just needs to be pre-approved. And so that helps minimize any sort of blowback on, somebody who doesn't see those things as being particularly pertinent issues. They can choose their own if they want to. And it just has to be something that is an actual social justice issue. So, yeah.
Yeah, I imagine some students come with some things that are not social justice
issues.
They
Absolutely do. And some try to... They try to get me to let them write about why those things are not social justice issues. Right. Like that's not the assignment. You don't have to do it if you think that it's not. Yeah. But that's not the assignment. Find something that you do believe in as a social justice issue.
Yeah. So when you deal with like challenges from students on those kinds of things, do those just trickle up to you? Is that your graduate students, do they handle a student who says, I don't know, and maybe it doesn't get that political. I don't know. Maybe
it does. Okay. Yeah. It depends on who they come to. I mean, they can absolutely come straight to me. Okay. There's a chain of command as far as who usually interacts the most, just because there's 20 TAs and one of me. Yeah. So they're a lot easier to get a hold of. But they can absolutely bypass everyone and just come to my office or just email me or just come to the stage before and after class, and talk with me directly. So they can do that as well. And they challenge me, but they also absolutely will challenge the grad students and the undergrads. If I have, some of the undergrads have been with me a while. Like I said, they come back semester after semester and they kind of know what I'm going to say and they're pretty comfortable taking on students. Others aren't, and, message me immediately and say, what should I say? How should I reply? Or, I'll just say, just send it to me, forward me the email. I'll take care of it. Things like that.
Yeah.
Most of the time it is respectful disagreement with some of the topics that I choose to cover, which is absolutely not unique at all in psychology. It's things like race, prejudice. It's things like sexuality, all of those typical hot button issues. That's the same. And the blowback on that.
But you dive into it, right? Like you made the choice to not avoid that where you are. Mm-hmm. So it must be important to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What else is there that's more important than how we treat other people? And I've got this amazing platform with thousands and thousands of 18-year-olds coming in. And a lot of them are coming in. Most of our population comes from Oklahoma, Texas, various areas, some very rural, some very urban. And I think it's vital that we help to inform the next generation of students. And I always talk about the fact that all I'm doing is planting seeds because that's all I can do. We know from psychology research that if you challenge people too hard, they pivot and actually get even stronger in their beliefs in the opposite direction, or they just stick their heads in the sand and ignore you. So I'm careful with pushing them beyond baby steps because they're young. They're still very impressionable, and they're still coming out of, many of them, an environment where their parents have directly told them that they're coming to the university and the liberals are going to indoctrinate them all of that. And so I try very hard to plant seeds that may not take root in my class, but may take root 4 or 5 years later after hearing the same message over and over again.
So this assignment, does it happen closer to the end of the course?
Okay. It does.
Okay. So at this point, you've talked a lot about psychological science and support, like how we support arguments and critical thinking.
And they know me well. Yeah. And we've already tackled things. We've already tackled other potentially controversial topics by the time we get to social psych and social justice. We've already done the chapter on particularly sexuality and gender. They've already seen my slide that has in really bright letters, "You can't pray the gay away," which is sort of a deal in Oklahoma. Conversion therapy and all that. So they have already seen me tackle those issues.
But you've also had all this time to build rapport with them.
Exactly.
They're enjoying like how can you not enjoy psychology? Right?
I have no idea how you could not enjoy every minute of this class.
and then they're asked to think further about some of these things. So oh man, it sounds like such a cool thing that you've built there.
Thank you.
I mean, I'd love to see it sometime. You ought to, I mean, maybe I should look back through your like Facebook feed, but I'd love to see like what that auditorium looks like.
I have pictures.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
very
I have some
cool.
pictures and some videos. A lot of especially this year is really great. We came in the fall. And we're full-time back in person. Unfortunately, we don't have a mask mandate and we don't have a vaccine mandate. So, people were pretty antsy, pretty jumpy coming back in the fall. But that room started filling up with 500 people in it. And the TAs were like, wow, this is so cool. And a whole bunch of them came up on stage and started taking pictures. And, it's a neat environment. I love it though. That's, like I said, I was trained by the previous intro psych coordinator. And that's how I kind of, academically grew up. Was these big rooms and this energy and this performance. And I really enjoy that. And I enjoy the diversity of the audience and things like that. So I wouldn't want to do it any other way.
Eric Landrum once had this idea. I don't think he ever did it, I don't think, but about traveling around the country and recording different teachers teaching in their environments.
Yeah.
That would be really, really cool to see, because I talk to all these folks, especially intro psych, because I teach so much of it. But wouldn't it be neat just to see all our colleagues who we meet at these conferences? But you don't get to see them come alive on a stage in front of their students. You know? Yeah.
Sure. And I think it's one of the things I love so much about these conferences is how wildly different we all really are, even though we have this same basic passion and these same basic interests. But then, some of us are teaching these tiny groups of 12 and everybody's, discussion the whole time. And then there's people like me who can't make discussion work incredibly well in a class of 500 with, stadium style seating and chairs bolted to the ground. There's not as much we can do. So we're both a product of, of course, our individual personalities and our styles, but the environment forces us to make real shifts in how we take all of this information we learn at NITOP and at other places and actually put it into our classes in an effective way.
Yeah. So when I imagine your classroom, are the students, is it like a bowl and you're at the bottom of it? Or are you like up top, above?
I'm probably equal in height with about the center of the room.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of goes downward, but I don't stay on the stage hardly at all.
Yeah.
I stay on the stage kind of at the beginning to do announcements. And if there's sort of a big thing that I need to get everyone's attention for, I'll come back up on the stage. But mostly I'm walking.
Yeah.
I'm walking the aisles. I'm talking to like students, and I'm mic'd up, of course. But that way I can really make face-to-face contact with all the different students. And I assign them seats, not by student, but by team, by group. And all the teams are named after psychologists. So we have like Team Milgram and Team Gazzaniga and Team Loftus. And so every exam unit, I move their team seating to a different area of the room.
Okay.
So that the people, the people who sit in front, they have to, move out of that area so that other people can have a chance to also get to sit in the front and experience just the vibe from a different part of the room.
Yeah, that's really neat. Okay, so what else didn't we cover in your intro course? For example, maybe I'll just ask some of the new work that's being done in intro in terms of outcomes and themes. And I know you've probably seen some of those things. How do you think about those in terms of your students? When recommendations come down from the APA, is this a ship that can turn quickly, or do you feel that pressure at all? Or what are you thinking? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, absolutely. No, it is. I feel like there haven't been very many recommendations that have come down that have been new for me, that I haven't already been doing in basically some format for a while. And I very much attribute that to the fact that this is year 9 at this conference that I've gone to, and that I've been absorbed in teaching and learning from master teachers since I started grad school. So nothing has come down that I've been, they're like, this is earth shattering and completely new, so far. So I'm glad about that.
Okay. So how do you deal with the immense amount of content in intro psych?
I think like most instructors, I've cut things year to year to year. So I started, like most, trying to cram everything in, and have really reconciled the fact that that's not my job. That my job is to get them interested in psychology, let them see that the field is not Freud. We're not asking people to lie on a couch and tell them about their mothers, and that there's more to psychology than that. But when I talk to my grad students about this as well, when we're looking at teaching and learning and things like that. When I decide what to teach, it's always with an eye on how can I best represent the field, and what will they actually use later. If this is the only psychology course they ever have, what kinds of things are important for them to know outside of this class?
Yeah.
And so that has framed a lot of what I've chosen to cut out. A lot of what I don't do that I think other traditional psychology professors might do. I'm sure I cover things that others don't, but I hit things pretty hard that are areas that I think they really need to know about. Things like the brain and neurons. I think that everything is going more biological, and they need to understand the research behind that. We talk a lot about development. We talk a lot about who we are as people, including personality, but also, as I said, sex and gender, social psychology, who we are as far as influencing factors, sleeping, dreaming, things that are like questions that they have that really impact their everyday lives. And I tend to stick to very broad level, surface level. I don't want to say surface level, but we don't get into really deep minutia of basically anything. And a lot of textbooks do still. They go much deeper than I do, but I don't think that's what they need to know. I think they need to know this broad overview.
I agree.
And less content, more application.
Yep. Yeah. No, I love that. Do you use a traditional textbook in your course?
No, I don't. So this came out of the pandemic, having to move online for a year. I used to use 12 years. I used a McGraw-Hill book and all of the Connect stuff, and I was really, really gung ho on all of that. And I still think it's a great system, but I found that the students weren't using it the way it was meant to be used. I think it's a fantastic system if it's used properly. but the students aren't using it that way.
Yeah.
And so what I started to do, I've also used Top Hat for a long time. And I use that for all the in-class quizzing and, quote unquote clicker, but it's a bring your own device program.
I've seen their tables. I don't know what they do.
Yeah. So it is, initially it really started as just a, what they call a BYOD, bring your own device program. So instead of having a physical clicker, you use your phone or your iPad or whatever, to answer questions. But they've expanded a whole lot, and now they do a whole bunch of different things. So I run my exams through there, and now my textbook is in there as well. And so I started with one of their intro psych books, and I did what's called a versioning of it. Like I versioned it to make it my own. And I extensively edited it, added tons of my own voice, my own videos, my own examples, my own questions. And so now it's really my book that is, that has some other flavor of the original author, but I think a lot of it is me. And the students comment that they can really, they can hear my voice when they read it.
Oh, that's great.
Which I love.
So Top Hat is a publisher as well in some way. They do a bunch of different things.
They do, and they have incorporated more and more. They've bought out some of the really smaller publishers and added those books to it. You can also get OpenStax books, Nova books in Top Hat. Okay, and they offer those free of charge, of course. Yeah. And then you can use all of the other things, all of the quizzing features, the exam features, they have whiteboard features. There's tons of other stuff, and I've really enjoyed a lot of their products have been huge to me during the pandemic. Things like, testing. I do all online tests, which started from being online with the pandemic. But we write all of our own test questions. I have a grad student who Google searches all of our questions every semester. So if they do wind up on the internet, we change those.
That's nice that you don't have to do that.
It is really nice. I'm very blessed to have as many helpers as I do. So I understand that. But no, so they Google search all the questions, but Top Hat also allows you to version questions. So I can write one exam, I can write, question 1, and then I can write an A, B, C, D version of that. And so instead of just having this huge test bank where it pulls from that, but you don't really know what mix of topic you're getting, this allows you to know exactly what mix of topic you're getting. You have the exact questions. It's just different versions. So not only are the exams, randomized, but the versions are also randomized. So an individual student might get 1C and 2D and 3A. And so they're sitting next to other people potentially who are getting the same content coverage, but different questions than they are.
They're taking those exams on their devices?
On their devices. And it's, I went to an open book, open notes model. Like I said, my questions are very applied. So it doesn't help them to have the definitions. I firmly don't believe in lockdown browsers or cameras watching them. I don't want any of that. So it is timed, but they're given usually a 48-hour window to sit down and take the exam. Once the clock starts, you have to take it in this time period, but you can move back and forth. Yeah. You can use all of your book, all of your notes, anything like that. And I'm not watching them or, being creepy or anything like that.
Yeah. So real quick, what's your philosophy? Why have you made that decision to not over manage?
Oh, just equity.
Yeah.
I think it's just, my daughter is 20 years old. She'll be 21 in May, and she has helped me tremendously, I think, throughout the last couple of years of my career, being a college student herself, and all of her friends that, of course, have grown up with her and that they're in college as well. And watching these good kids who are just freaking out, panicking over I have to turn on my camera and I have to show my room. And what if my cat comes in? And I know as an educator that there are solutions to all of that.
Yes.
They don't know that though. Yeah. They just are really nervous, and really it's one more layer of, I'm not testing them on how well they can manage their anxiety. That's not what I want them to do. So instead of taking the easy way out and watching them, I'm just going to write better test questions.
That's it, right?
I'm just going to take the time. It's always a creative,
sometimes difficult or hard, time-consuming solution, but there are always solutions that are
There's
good
always solutions.
Equitable. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was talking today to some teachers about just this outcome we found, or from the census that we did for intro psych instructors,
Mm-hmm.
this survey, and one of the things that continues to come up on like one of the biggest issues in intro psych is getting students to read their book, to do the
Sure,
readings.
of course.
And by the way, I thought that for a long time, and then you just put it on a different lens. It's like, you can solve that problem. You just have to be creative about it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you write readings that are more accessible in your own voice, which not everybody can do, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But our book has a couple of paragraphs and then something, a video, an activity, a question that checks their understanding. And I'm sure a lot of them skip through to the questions and then might have to go back and read the pertinent sections. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine too.
That's fine.
However they're getting the knowledge, I don't care that they're doing it in textbook order, as long as they're getting it.
Yeah. Well, hey, before we take off, let me just ask you a couple questions, because I like to kind of dive back. When did you figure out that you like teaching?
Ooh, grad school.
So not until grad school.
No. OU we allow our grad students to teach pretty early on, and that's really cool because by the time I went on the job market, I had a lot of practice already teaching classes. But it wasn't until the first class I taught after getting into grad school. I taught Intro to Personality over the summer, and I really enjoyed it. I thought, I can do this. I can emphasize this in my career.
What's your area of
social?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what did you think you were going to be doing with a PhD in social?
I don't think I had a plan.
Okay.
I think I was one of those who just really was super interested in the field and figured, I have to keep taking classes. That's what I want to do. And eventually they kicked me out of undergrad, so I ended up in grad school, and I was just really fascinated by the field. So I wanted to learn and figured something would fall into place. Either I'd become a researcher or a professor, or, whatever it is that people did after grad school. And
you just loved it. And so you figured you trusted it. Yeah.
It's it really just kind of fell in that way,
Okay.
that I wound up, and I wound up starting grad school very much with a researcher. My first major professor was Jennifer Boston, who is now at South Florida, actually. I see her from time to time here, when we're here at the same time during the years. But when I realized how much I really wanted to be involved in teaching, I switched major professors to be under Nicole Campbell, who was the intro psych coordinator, and she kind of took it from there. How
long did she do that job for?
Intro psych coordinator?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't even know. She was there way before I got there.
Yeah. Oh, I remembered a question that I had earlier. Do you all call yourselves teaching specialists and research specialists within the department, or is that just words that you use?
Yeah.
You used that before. That's fine. Yeah.
Right. So my official job, like the job description was master teacher and intro psychology coordinator. But I'm just a regular associate professor.
I love master teacher. That's good.
I know.
That's
Makes you
good.
feel really powerful,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
it does.
I master all of the things. I'm not sure what I master, but
Where did you go to college?
at OU. Yeah, I did my undergrad and my grad work there. So I actually have some of the same professors now, who are my colleagues who I had in undergrad.
Yeah, there are, in all the Psych Sessions episodes we've done, there's a few folks like you who have just loved it and
stayed.
never left.
Yep.
Now, did you grow up in Oklahoma?
I did not. I grew up in Las Vegas, which is super weird. But I did. I grew up in Las Vegas.
Oh, I think we talked about this.
Yeah, we talked about it for a minute,
Yeah,
and then you
I
said,
told you,
"Don't talk about it." We're going to talk about it. Yeah. I grew up in Las Vegas. My mom and my stepdad worked at the casinos, and I grew up really at the Excalibur, which now is kind of old, but at the time was super great.
Was this in Old Vegas? Like, where is Excalibur? Is it on the Strip or is it downtown?
Yeah, it's on the Strip.
Okay. Yeah.
And they would pick me up after school, and I would do my homework like at the Excalibur, like at a table or something, and then I would go watch all the jousting shows and all of that, and just meet my parents later. So I was a casino kid. That was my most comfortable environment. We moved to Arizona for a couple of years, and I lived in Flagstaff, and then I ended up moving to live with my dad in Oklahoma, in Lawton, and that's how I wound up there. But it was really the weird, eerie silence after you leave Vegas, going anywhere else. It took me a while to get used to that it was quiet in grocery stores and in other places. Just like I'd imagine it takes people time to get used to the constant like ding, 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 that happens when you go to Vegas. It's that jarring when you leave.
We were just in Lake Tahoe, and so we spent one night at a resort in Reno. And my daughter, she's 9, she'd never seen anything like this. Yeah. And we walk into the casino floor, and I looked at her face, and it was like, what is going on here? It's like video games for adults, but they're all drinking and smoking. They're
all drinking and smoking. And it's like that in 7-Eleven. And it's like that in the grocery stores. Yes. And it's like that
at the airport.
At the airport. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I mean, that was my entire childhood environment. Like, I didn't realize that gambling was not legal in other places. Like, I had no concept of that
because as a kid, you don't. Do.
Exactly. As a kid, this is just where you grow up. And so the eerie silence everywhere else, it really affected me for a while. It was just very quiet. But anyway, then I wound up in Lawton, and then went to OU. And after I got my PhD, I left for 5 years and taught at a smaller teaching school called Cameron University, which is in Lawton. And then when the position at OU opened up, came back.
So you applied for it and you knew people there, you had relationships there.
Yes.
And
actually Nicole, the Dean Campbell, reached out to me and said, I know you love Cameron, but this position is opening up, and is this something that you would, consider wanting to do? And I said, yeah, absolutely.
Were you a TA in that course? In her course? Oh my God.
Yeah, several times.
It's such a cool story.
Yeah, no, several times. I was a GA for her a whole bunch of times. And in fact, several of the professors who are still there, I was their grad assistant at some point in their classes. And like I said, one in particular, I took several undergrad classes with as well, who's still there. So like, it's another thing that I talk to my grad assistants about, because I'm really the person who emphasizes teaching in the department. And so my grad assistants, we get together weekly. We have a reading circle where we read teaching books and talk about teaching relative, as related to the things they're learning in my class. And so I talk to them a lot about teaching. And one of the things I talk about is that mentorship, is the fact that you have no idea if that TA who you're in class with right now is going to be your colleague. Cause I was that kid.
Wow.
I was that 19-year-old or whatever in research methods and with a professor who's now my colleague. So you never know who they are.
Wow. Well, that is a great story. Jenel, thanks for sitting down with me. I'm glad we got to do this. I know we have to get out of here and travel home now and go back to our other lives.
It's so pretty here.
I know. It's so great. Thanks again.
You're very welcome.